nobody can touch me because I would get blacklisted for that.
The persona in the front that we put forward into the universe.
You'd be standing and
Hi, I'm Gabby. Because I will miss that aspect.
something else. Yeah.
You're people, you're not creatures. I'm so sorry. I don't care if you hate me.
No. Tissue paper.
I dated a lot of Sagittarius men, and that just was not working.
Girls love her, boys love her.
And those connections and ideas change. 5% of podcasts don't make it past the first year. Hi, and welcome back to the Z-List Celebrities. I'm super excited today. I have somebody that has been a mentor of mine in the wedding industry joining me today. It's a long time overdue. This is also the last episode of Wedding Industry Talk for this month. So super excited to wrap it up. This is Anna Coates. Anna, do you want to kind of tell everybody what you do and how you started everything that you do?
Yeah, hi. So I'm Anna. I am the editor of Marry Me Tampa Bay. We are a local wedding publication in the Tampa, Florida area. And I started this, over a decade ago. Believe it or not, before Instagram existed, before Pinterest existed, I started this publication. So that tells you how long I've been around. At Marry Me Tampa Bay, we're a local wedding publication. So we feature real weddings that happen within our geographical area. We also provide expert advice, and it's not fluffy advice. It's actual advice that couples need to know to help them budget and to help them make educated decisions about planning their wedding. We also do networking events for the wedding industry, marketing consulting for the wedding industry. So all things wedding industry. But for couples specifically, it's a lot of advice, ideas, inspiration. People can actually reach out to our team and say, hey, give me some suggestions for a venue that fits this constraint. Or, hey, I'm thinking about hiring this wedding vendor. What do you guys think of them? All of our services are completely free to couples. And we just want to be able to be their advocate to help them know and steer them in the right direction, to be like, oh, you know what? I've never heard of that vendor before. If you like their style, you may want to check out X, Y, and Z, who we know have been in the business for a long time and provide really great service. So that's a little bit about Marry Me Tampa Bay. In terms of how I got started, much like many people, I was a bride, and after my wedding, I didn't want to give up the wedding process. But much like you, Gabby, I did not want to be a wedding planner. That just gives me complete anxiety. My background's in marketing and my degree's in journalism, and I missed writing. So I thought, hey, you know what? Let me just start writing about weddings. There wasn't anything like this. Again, way back then, that didn't really exist. So I just know that when I was getting married, I would have appreciated just being able to scroll and to see things that were geographically local to me and obtainable, and not just inspiration that was in California or somewhere else. I wanted to be able to see venues in the area and photographers. Granted, we have Instagram and social media and all the things now, but it's still a really great resource that gives you a lot of information that you still can't get on social media.
No, I totally agree. And that was going to be like one of my questions. You kind of beat me to it of like that, you created this publication, but why not just be a wedding planner? Like basically, what are you, and I know we get this question a lot on Marry Me Tampa Bay, at least in the years that I've worked with you. And it's always, oh, so you're a wedding planner or something like that. But what are the differences between our publication and being a wedding planner? Because I feel like a lot of the times people really struggle with that differentiation.
Oh my gosh, so much. So for one thing, we don't actually go to the weddings. We do go to the weddings now as content creation, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. Yeah. But in terms of, we are just a resource. So just like people go online now and say, hey, what are your suggestions for this and that? And you get answers from everyone from all walks of life who maybe only attended a wedding and they're like, oh, you should use them. This is great. We are a resource where couples can find reputable vendors that we have personally vetted, that we've worked with, that we've known for a long time. So instead of going out into the internet and just seeing what's out there, we have curated all of that for you to kind of give it to you in a nice, neat little package of saying, hey, here are the best of the best. Here are different venues for inspiration, different decor for inspiration. But if you're looking for reputable vendors and venues, here are the best of the best that we have.
Super cool. So I just have a question overall, just especially watching you grow over the years. I what, I've been with you since like 2017 or something.
Yeah, I think
18?
so, which is crazy to
Long
think it's
time.
been that long.
I know, but so I've watched you grow, you scale, you figure out different aspects of business, especially in the wedding industry. And since we are so niched to specifically Tampa, do you feel as a business owner there's going to be eventually a cap of your scalability, or do you see that there's new markets you can bleed into that will continue to grow the business? Tell us about like a little bit of your growth and like how you got to like where you are and where you see it going.
Sure. So everything I do with Marry Me Tampa Bay, I look at things a little bit differently in terms of I look at everything that we do from a marketing perspective for our preferred vendors and venues that we work with. And then from a business aspect too, while I definitely have shiny object syndrome that I have to kind of hone in, I also think about, okay, is that business pivot or addition, is that actually make sense viably? Because something Gabby, is as being a business owner, is we have lots of ideas, but we only have so much time.
Yeah.
And you have to make sure that all the time and focus you put into one project does not hinder another project. So as much as I've toyed the idea of creating Marry Me Miami or Marry Me Atlanta or Marry Me whatever city name, I've really held back from that because there's so much within the Tampa Bay area that we really haven't tapped. And we purposely keep our lists small and curated because we don't just have a vendor listing. It's a very hands-on service that we provide. So we want to make sure that we're able to give that marketing support and that business support to the preferred venues and vendors that we work with. So for me, I've decided to really kind of stay honed in what it is that we do. Although we have expanded by offering marketing services. We do social media management, which Gabby helps with. We do blog writing. We have recently gotten to the content creator space, which is a whole new avenue to go down. So while I've thought about branching out into other cities, it's something that I really want to focus on ours to make sure we're providing a really high quality level of service. But if the right opportunity comes and the right person, Gabby, if you ever move to Colorado, we could start Marry Me Colorado. So.
Hello.
Can
I
you hear
think you
me?
froze. I think you froze. Sorry, but I got
Oh,
you. Yes, no,
okay.
all of that is fantastic, and I totally understand that aspect of wanting to like center it here first and like have a good foundation before any kind of expansion like that. But I definitely have always wondered if that was something that you wanted to expand into other places, especially knowing we have team all over the place. So I know that that's always been something on the front of my mind. But I would love to get in that you kind of touched on a little bit is there is two sides to your business. There is the vendors themselves, and then there is the couples. And, I started out with you doing a lot more on the couples side. I've now transitioned and I do a lot more, I feel like, on the vendor side. How do you go about for these couples, so we're doing them justice, vetting the right vendors? Like, what is your vetting process?
So for every single vendor who becomes a preferred vendor in Marry Me Tampa Bay, they do go through a vetting process. And what we do is we have them send us references of local industry vendors they've worked with. So other planners, other photographers, venue coordinators, etc. And then we have a questionnaire that we send to them to say, hey, tell us more about you working with the business. Do you recommend them? What's their personality like? That type of thing. And believe it or not, we have turned people away who provided references to us. And the reference was like, you know what? I don't dislike them, but I don't love them either. So vendors tend to be very honest with me when they're providing references because it's also their name on the line. They don't want to give a reference to another vendor and say, oh, yeah, I recommend them when they actually don't. So that's been a really good way for us to make sure that we are hiring quality vendors that do a good job and provide a good service. Something I definitely want to point out is just because someone is featured on Marry Me Tampa Bay does not mean they're a preferred vendor. We feature all different types of vendors, but if you go to the site and you look at the preferred vendor section or preferred venue section, you'll see our actual curated preferred vendors. But just because they're featured does not mean that they're a preferred vendor. But we do the vetting process, and then I do a face-to-face or a face-to-face via Zoom with them to also get to know their personality and whatnot. And a lot of vendors we've known for a long time, or the people who have vouched for them, give really strong, glowing recommendations that make us feel comfortable with recommending vendors. What I always tell couples when they come to us for vendors is that we've done the homework to find who is established, who is reputable, who provides great service. It's up to you to find who you click with, who is your style, who's in your price point, who's within your budget. So again, we kind of make a short list for you so you can decide from there what's the best direction to go in.
Well, and I've always loved too that, like you said, when it comes to crediting, I feel like in our industry, we're always talking about proper credits and things like that, especially when we're localized as much as we are. I love on the Marry Me Tampa Bay site for those like listening that are going to go peek at it after. It's very explicit, like in the blog post when you're looking at a wedding, if you're really inspired by it, if you want to know who the preferred vendors on that wedding are, those are marked and like identified as preferred vendors. And then below are still all of the other vendors. So you can like peek, like if you see a florist photo and you look at it, you can find out if they're a preferred florist. If they're not, that can kind of still be a way for you to see that work, whether or not they're a vendor. But no, I think that that's a really great way to vet is those referrals. I also have always wondered, because I'm not sure, I've never really asked you, do you ever go out and seek vendors yourself that you feel like would make great fits, or is it really much people are coming to you?
Yeah, it's a little bit, of the two. We definitely put out there, who our ideal client, ideal vendor is that we'd love to work with, and we definitely reach out to them. Usually it's a lot of vendors reaching out to us, which is great. But if it's someone who maybe a planner has submitted a wedding and they're a preferred planner and the photographer is just amazing. But sure, we'll send them information and say, hey, you should really think about becoming a preferred vendor. We do cap it out right now. Our photographer and planners are almost capped out. We don't want to have more than about 15 for each of those categories because of, again, the service that we provide to them. But we're always looking for great vendors. And there's people who move to the area too, who are not new to the industry, but new to the area who are relocating that sometimes will reach out to us as well of trying to get established locally in our area.
And that's another good segue into some more clarification and questions that I have. Do you feel like you do a pretty good job of sorting varieties of vendors so that you have something that fits everybody's needs? Like, I know photography could be a big one, but editing styles are so uniquely different to you. So, having that kind of variety to show people instead of just what might be considered traditional as we see these wedding industries kind of shift and change.
Yeah, for sure. So we've published over 2,000 weddings to the site, and I've personally seen every single one of those weddings. And for us, we get really excited whenever there is a new type of style or a vendor who really does a style really well, because we do want to have that variety. When it comes to photography, light and airy tends to be the norm. But there's couples like you who love kind of more of that dark and moody vibe or something that isn't traditional. So we definitely want to have all different varieties as well as price points of vendors, because what is the norm does not necessarily mean that's what you want for your wedding. And with our site too, we don't just focus on really high-end weddings. We showcase all different types of weddings at all different price points. The big thing for us though is that first of all, they hire a good photographer, because a good photographer can make a wedding that maybe wasn't as expensive look more expensive, and vice versa. I've seen weddings that were easily six figures, but the photography was just not very good. And it's a shame because we can't feature those weddings. So we want to be able to showcase what is available in the Tampa Bay area, but also whenever you're investing in hiring quality vendors.
Exactly. And I feel like that actually leads into another great thing to talk about is in our industry there are competitors not necessarily on the Tampa Bay scale, but on the national scale. So when it comes to things like the knot or brides, do you feel like the difference in there, or and share any differences you feel that make you stand out versus the competition? But I do feel like for me, I see a lot of the difference, and they do focus a lot on luxury weddings that might not be affordable or attainable to those, planning a wedding, because weddings are so expensive. Do you feel like that maybe that's where you kind of shine as well, in your ability to kind of showcase things that are different and unique but not like completely bank breakers?
Yeah, for sure. So you definitely have different types of publications. We can start with the Knot and Wedding Wire. That's kind of like the Amazon of wedding vendors, right? But what's also different with like the Knot and Wedding Wire, you'll find different vendors on different sites. So for example, there are a lot of vendors who who are our preferred vendors who are not preferred vendors of the Knot and Wedding Wire. And it's because they may not want to take on 100 weddings a year. They may have more of a boutique type of business where they focus on a very specific ideal type of client. So you will find as you look across different websites and different vendor listing sites, you may see one vendor here and not see another vendor there. And just because they're not listed there does not mean that they're reputable. For the Knot and Wedding Wire, anyone can pay and become a vendor. So it just depends. If they're listed there, it's because they're paying to be listed there. However, full disclosure, to be a preferred vendor with us, you definitely have to pay as well. But they don't do any type of vetting process at all for the Knot and Wedding Wire. Anyone can just sign up and create a photography company and page and have a listing on Knot and Wedding Wire. There are some publications that do have stricter types of things they look at. Maybe, with Style Me Pretty, that's obviously a very kind of light and airy type of publication. So your traditional dark and moody photographer, you may not find them there. And then there's publications that are quite the opposite. They focus just on dark and moody. So you're not going to see a lot of light and airy there. So different publications will have different niches. Ours, instead of being style focused, is location focused. Knot and Wedding Wire is just kind of the whole gamut of everything. So it depends on what you're looking for to what you're going to find on those sites.
Do you feel like it should be a priority? I feel like with social media and the rise of social media, some vendors don't, and this is great to chat about because I do have a lot of vendors that actually tune in and listen. How important are things like these memberships and networking? Is that something that everybody should be investing in their business and it should be considered a marketing cost?
1,000%. And whatever it is, it doesn't necessarily have to be, quote, paid advertising. But the wedding industry is a very tight knit community. A lot of couples tend to find their couples through referrals. Think about it. When a couple is going to look at a venue, they're usually handed a preferred venue list or preferred vendor list of, hey, these are the photographers you recommend, that type of thing. When a couple is hiring a planner or a photographer, they're going to ask the same thing, like, oh, hey, I'm looking for a florist. Do you have anyone you recommend? And because the wedding industry is so unique in a few different things, one is it's quite interesting with the dynamics. On the wedding day, you've hired, let's say, maybe 10 or 15 different vendors, but they all have to work together cohesively. If you have one person, let's say maybe it's the caterer, right, who's being difficult and they're not setting up when they're supposed to or doing whatever, that can throw the whole day off. So it's really important for these vendors, although they may work separately, they all have to come together the day of. So vendors will often recommend vendors who are not only do a good job, but are who nice and easy to work with the day of, because everything goes so quickly. There are so many moving parts. People have to be team players. And we all know that there are some vendors who they may do a great job, but they're just not great people to work with, or they don't provide great customer service or that type of thing. So you have to look beyond social media, which Gabby, I know you have learned in a couple instances of your wedding hiring, that you can't just rely on social media. You really need to do your own due diligence and get references, not just from other couples, because one couple may be like, oh yeah, they were great to work with. They only worked with them one time. Ask around, ask your photographer, ask your planner, ask your florist, ask whoever, hey, I'm thinking about hiring XYZ to do my makeup. Have you heard of them before? And they could let you know, hey, you know what? You may want to look at these other companies. And vendors, even if they've had a bad experience, vendors are not always quick to badmouth other vendors. So sometimes you have to read between the lines. If they say, hey, what do you think about XYZ? And they're trying to push you in another direction, it's probably for a reason that they don't want to verbally say that maybe that person doesn't provide great service. Now, they may not know them, and that's okay too. Of course, we don't know everyone in the industry, but sometimes you need to read between the lines, because some vendors are not quick to say that I wouldn't recommend them, but they'll be like, oh, you know what? If you like them, you may want to look at this other company who I know does a really great job.
Yeah, exactly. I always find it really exciting and interesting as well. Like as you're talking about these preferred vendor lists, especially coming from venues. I know my venue had one, and it was so interesting to go down it because I am getting married a little outside of our wheelhouse. So I didn't know any names on there, but my friend who's looking to get married at the aquarium, she immediately sent me her preferred vendor list because she was like, okay, who do you know on this list? And it was great to see a couple of our Marry Me Tampa Bay vendors on there, like in the photography section, the catering, and things like that. So kind of a cool way to see that. But yeah, being on that good side and graces of those venues, I feel like most of what my experience was, when it came to preferred vendor lists, it was coming from my venue and it was coming from my planner. So like I feel like
Mm-hmm.
those two are like the two types of people that you want to have good relationships with as another vendor, and really like, foster that mentality, because your planner, technically, if you're doing a hands-off plan, your planner is picking your vendors basically. So I think that's a big key also as well. Is there in We have obviously a ton of different categories within our vendor list, but do you feel like there's always room for growth on that as well, and kind of expanding different categories as we see new things pop up? I know recently we're seeing all these bachelorette vendors pop up, and we've started to like encroach into that territory. Do you feel like that's going to be something that continues to continue, like go on that way?
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, back in the day when I first started, like photo booths were like the new hot and upcoming category. That's like, oh, everyone has to have a photo booth. Like that's like the new cool thing. Granted, these days for most weddings, it's like almost a standard thing for those of you who like photo booths. But yes, I mean the wedding industry continues to evolve, and even with wedding content creation, a year ago that didn't really exist in terms of being a viable category, and now it's something that is a viable category. So it's really important to be connected in the industry, whether it be for our publication, for wedding planners, for venues, to know who's out there and who's able to provide these newer services, and who does it well. I do want to back up though, talking back about the preferred venue list and vendor list. One thing that people may not realize, preferred vendor lists from your planner, definitely trust those. When it comes to preferred venue lists, that is something that can be really hit or miss. Sometimes those preferred venue lists can be a little bit dated. And it may be that that vendor has been on that list for the past 5 years. And since then, 3 people have worked at that venue, and that vendor just keeps getting inherited by the new list. So preferred venue lists, I would definitely talk to the venue coordinator and say, hey, of this list, who do you personally recommend? Who is it that you like? At least when it comes to customer service style, that type of thing. Because again, sometimes a preferred venue list, they can be 50-50, to where some venues do a great job of keeping their list up to date. Some venues don't do a great job with that. So just something to know about preferred venue lists.
That's great. I never would have thought of that, but yeah, I can definitely see where some outdatedness comes in for sure. Let's take it a different direction. I have a question. I kind of know some of the inner workings, just haven't worked forever with you, but would love to know more, especially for, I know in the DMs all the time I see couples reaching out about how to get featured. I know a lot of what we do in feature is featuring those members. What really determines a wedding's kind of worthiness to be published on the site?
Got it. So every publication is going to be different. And, there are some wedding websites that you do have to have that luxurious over the top wedding to be featured. Again, with us, we are not style focused, we are location focused. So the number one thing we look for by far is going to be the quality of the photography. If you do not have a good photographer, if they don't if they don't have, usually it comes down to the editing. There are, you can look at a picture and know if that photo was from like 2007, right? There are still some photographers who shoot like they did 5 years ago, even 10 years ago. So we look at the quality of the photography and the editing style. That's going to be the first thing we look at. And then next is going to be the decor and the details of the wedding. Whenever people come to our site and are looking for inspiration, yes, they want to see shots, of their venue. They want to see, oh, how did you style the ceremony area? How did you style the reception? Where did you put this? Where did you put that? So details and decor for us are really important, so people can see what type of details and decor they used and how they used it within their venue space as well. When it comes to portraits, of course, portraits are great to showcase the photographer, but if you don't know that couple, you don't want to see 40 portraits of just that couple. So we try to do a good mix where it leans more towards telling the overall story with the details and decor, and then sprinkling in, things like the first look or the first time the groom sees, the bride walk down the aisle. We like to have those, but definitely details and decor by far.
And I will say, from just for everybody to know out there that's looking at Marry Me Tampa Bay, I'm the one that goes through all of those photos as well. And I do get really tired of looking at the same portrait over and over again. I'm excited to get to those details. I'm excited to see the unique pieces. So I would definitely say, although like you're the one bringing me the wedding to go through and pick those photos, I'm excited when you send me a wedding that's exciting, because otherwise it starts to look the same all day. Like if I call like 6 weddings in a day, I don't want to see the same wedding over and over again. So I think creativity and uniqueness is definitely a key in that, which I love seeing a standout wedding. So we've had some really good ones come through that I don't think have hit the site yet. So people will have to kind of stay tuned for those that I've been really obsessed with. So it's been kind of cool to see that. Do you have like a good ratio of like, we're featuring this wedding because it's just trending and it's quality work, versus this is a member and we want to make sure that they're showcased and something that's new and relevant for them?
So I would say probably 95% of our weddings have a member in there in some way,
Hmm.
but we have over 100 plus members and we cover a geographical area. So that's just going to happen. So people who are not members or preferred vendors are more than welcome to submit weddings and we feature them. I think we have coming up next week. We have one that I don't know if it has any of our preferred vendors in it, but it was a great wedding and it was actually the daughter of a wedding vendor got married in the area. So we wanted to be able to showcase, her daughter's wedding, even though they're not one of our preferred vendors. It's just, kind of a courtesy thing to do in the industry of showcasing, some of our vendors in the industry of them getting married or their loved ones getting married. But most of our weddings do tend to have a preferred vendor just because we work with a lot of really great preferred vendors in the area who one of the 15 usually have some tie back to us, but anyone can submit a wedding over to us.
And you have a process where basically after the wedding and after they get their photos, they can couples can just go in ahead and submit, and we go through that as well, right?
Yeah, so the photographer or the planner needs to submit the wedding. So if a couple really wants to have their wedding featured on Marry Me Tampa Bay, reach out to your photographer, reach out to your planner, and they can submit over. There is a submission process to go through. Unfortunately, we can't accept every single wedding. And sometimes we will get multiple weddings that, while it's a very pretty wedding, the photography was great, the decor was great, we've featured 5 other weddings that look just like it, or we featured 5 other weddings in the past couple months from that venue. Right now, Tampa River Center is a really hot venue where we get lots and lots of wedding submissions from. So unfortunately, even if it's an amazing wedding, we're just not always able to feature every single wedding because we need to have more on the site than just a Tampa River Center wedding.
Yeah.
So we also take into account that. But if you have your heart set on getting featured in other publications as well, let your planner and photographer know that ahead of time, because they will usually have a good idea of what that publication looks for, or to know, what style that is. Again, if you're in love with Style Me Pretty, it's very light and airy, very blush golden pink. So if you're having something that's going to be, a bolder, vibrant purple and green palette, that's probably not going to be the right fit for that publication. So you have
Exactly.
to understand what they're looking for too.
No, and I definitely, I one thing I love about our publication, and I see pretty regularly with other people that they struggle with, is we don't have and correct me if I'm wrong, we don't have exclusivity. So I feel like I see a lot of girls get really upset because they're like, oh, well, I'm waiting for, and I'm not sure which one exactly. You probably know better which one has exclusivity, if it's the Knot or whatever it is, the Wedding Wire. Whichever one has exclusivity, I'll watch girls be like, yeah, I can't do anything with my photos until I know if I got this, and even if I get it, then I can't submit it here, and it gets complicated. So I love that we're able to share those weddings, but there's no like strings attached to it that like, oh, this can't be anywhere else. I appreciate that because I feel like there's not a lot of publications that are like that. There's a lot of exclusivity that goes on in this industry for sure.
Yeah, for print, obviously, if it's in print, they want to be the first to publish that wedding, which I completely understand. But sometimes that can be a 9 month, 15-month process to where your wedding can't be featured anywhere else until it's printed there. And sometimes they can't even really publish it on social media either. So that can be the case. And then with some of your national publications, same thing. They require exclusivity, meaning that they have to be the first one to publish it. We don't put those constraints on our features because one, if your wedding was published in a national publication, we want to showcase it on Marry Me Tampa Bay too to get in front of a local audience. And secondly, if you have an amazing wedding, we want you to be able to share that in different publications as well. So for us specifically, we don't maintain that. We want lots of people to be able to see it and lots of vendors to be able to share that as well, because that's a very important part to the vendors is having their weddings featured. That gets the work out in front of the audience of the publication. So that's something that for couples, if you really appreciate what your vendors do, and if you really appreciate the service they provided to you on your wedding day, then if a publication does reach out to you and say, hey, we'd love to feature you, can you answer these questions? Or if your vendor says, hey, I want to submit your wedding, can you answer these questions? While it may be like, oh gosh, that was a year ago. I don't care if my wedding is published or not. To the vendor, it's really, really important to them, and it really helps to grow their business. So if you're kind of indifferent about it, but the vendor reaches out or the publication reaches out, definitely take the time to answer those questions because that really helps your entire vendor team.
And for those listening that are doing that or are somebody that is reached out to do that, my one like request from you is, as the people that write these and put these together, tell us about it. Like, actually give us information about your wedding. Otherwise, we're just making guesses and the blog isn't as exciting. We want those like reviews from people. We want to be able to have the little small detail that you add in there that like we don't know because we weren't there. So I would definitely advise, if you are submitting your wedding, the more info, the better. I hate when we have to go in the back end and like play the game of, okay, well, like, what did you say about this vendor? We're not sure. We didn't get a response. I want the more information. So the more you can provide, the better when you're looking to have your wedding published. And it's a fun process too. I like putting it all together, and we have a great team that like everybody does a little piece of it. So everybody's hands touch it a little bit before it actually goes out. And I think that's really cool.
Yeah. And not to mention, again, if it's something to where maybe the couple themselves, they weren't big into the wedding planning process and they're like, you know what, our planner made all the decisions or my mom made all the decisions. That's still something that, I'm sure your parents would be really excited to see your published wedding and to see all your mom's hard work be published. So even if it's something that you're not super into at the moment, someone in your family will really appreciate seeing that. Maybe it's your grandma, maybe it's your aunt, maybe it's whoever. But that's just a really cool way to share your wedding day with people who weren't able to be a part of it.
Yeah, it's a really beautiful recap too for those who are family or friends that maybe couldn't make it, and being able to browse through that, or also just kind of a reminder. Like, usually these publications, I mean, we feature weddings seasonally. I know, I'm sure you have a method to the madness and system. I don't know what it is. Couldn't figure it out if I tried, but I will see, we go in and we publish things that might be from last year, but it's because it's thematic to like the month we're entering into or something like that. And so, like, a lot of these weddings, they've sat in the queue for a minute and like they're finally getting their moment to shine. So if it's a year later, this is a great moment to relive it and like share it around with your friends and family and be like, hey, do you remember this? Or look at this picture that ended up in there and things like that. So I think that's a great way to look at it as well.
Yeah. And something else, if you're a couple who does utilize social media or goes on and looks at Marry Me Tampa Bay or other publications, those past weddings are what inspired you to help plan your wedding. So you're just kind of like passing along that torch. If your wedding is featured, now your wedding is inspiration for that next set of couples who are getting married. So that's kind of a cool part of the process too, that people may not realize whenever their wedding is featured. Like, now your ceremony could be on someone else's Pinterest board. You may never know about it, but that's just kind of the cool thing about having your wedding featured.
Exactly. So I have a question for you. What is a wedding trend right now? And by trend, like, I know on social media we get a lot of heat for like calling things trends in the wedding industry. But what is a traditional, like, what we would call trend right now that you're seeing in the wedding industry that you're obsessed with?
So, gosh, that's a good question. We see a lot. I, I go both ways. Of course, kind of similar to what you were saying earlier, we see so many weddings that you can only see so many pictures of greenery down a table to where you're like, okay, it doesn't feel as exciting as when you see that really bold, cool thing. But at the same time, there's also, if you do quote a trendy wedding, you also have to think about, how is that going to look in 20 years? Think about like the girlies who got married in the 80s and they have like the poofy hair and the poofy dress. Like that is
It's
not
coming
timeless.
back.
It is coming back, but it'll also be gone like 5 years later too. So I go back and forth between, what I enjoy seeing and then what's going to be classic and around forever. I think when it comes to trends, the biggest thing is really just to make it your own, incorporate personal details that make it special to you, because for your guests, like of course they're going to love seeing, the opulent decor, over the top thing, whatever it may be, but trying to create things that are going to be memorable. You know what? I do have to say there is one trend that is a trendy thing that I am liking besides wedding content creators, which hopefully isn't just a trend. The after the tone. So where you can pick up a phone and leave a message for a couple. I think that is a really cool kind of trendy thing that is net new. And what I like about that is it's fun to hear someone's voice, the excitement in their voice. It's fun to hear like maybe they've been drinking too much and they just leave this really crazy babbling message to you. But that is just a memory that you can hold, because after the day is over, that's all you have left is just your memory. So after the tone, I feel like is really cool. I actually got to meet the owners recently at a conference I was at. And I don't know if you know this, Gabby, but you would probably appreciate this. Whenever they give you all of your voice recordings, you also have the option to get them put on vinyl, where you can take like your top, I don't know, it's like maybe 40 minutes, I think they can put on vinyl, but you can actually put that on a record, like your top ones, and have that as a record, which I think is a really, really cool thing. And that's something, you can play that, whenever you need to, if you want to just have that memory that's there, and that's really fun. So that's probably a trend that I really like out there, because it takes your wedding and it helps create an extra memory from it.
I definitely am loving, and I know it's a trend and we'll go back out of it. I am not a classic golden beigey girl. I am not the all white florals. That's still trending, but I feel like we are starting to peel away and color is coming back. And I just want more color. I want it to look like a rainbow threw up, honestly. Like I want to see more themed colored weddings done in like a more elegant way, and I feel like we're starting to transition for that, but people are so afraid of color. Like I think that would be my one thing to like couples to like think about. You don't have to be afraid of color. Like I don't want to see the white weddings anymore. I don't.
100%. And that has to do a lot of times where when it comes to trends, a lot of people will go to Pinterest or to social media to see what's out there. And what happens is, it takes a while sometimes for things to catch on and kind of be mainstream, right? If there's just a few of those photos out there, then not as many people see them, not as many people go with them. So if you do have a certain look or style or color palette and you're just not finding what it is that you want, ask your wedding vendor, because just because they haven't done it before doesn't mean they can't do it. It just means that no other couple has asked them to do that for them. And they would be really excited to do something that's not kind of the everyday thing that they've always done. And also to look for planners. You have wedding planners. You also have wedding designers. Not every planner is a designer. But there are planners who do both, and there are wedding designers who can, just like an interior designer, take your aesthetic and really help create something new and unique. When it comes to social media for inspiration for your wedding, it's a double-edged sword, because you don't ever want to give your vendor a picture and say, this is exactly what I want. You don't want to copy someone else's wedding. You will say, hey, this is my inspiration of what I'd like to have. So you've hired them for a reason. Let them have a little a little leeway within what you give them to be like, hey, how can we recreate this, but with my twist or with my preference or
Yeah.
my color palette or within my budget too.
No, I love that. And you said ask your planner, but you can also just ask me because for some reason I've niched myself on TikTok. Like the only videos lately that get attention on TikTok for me are when people comment their like wedding style and color palette and how they're having a hard time. And then I make a video of a mood board for it. So I guess now I just make wedding mood boards for like a living over here. But I
Love it.
actually do love it. And a lot of the time it's very niched and I can't necessarily find an exact decor picture, but I will find the color scheme and put it together. I will like give you little elements you can add to it. I think I just posted one the other day and she was like, I want like a full on citrus wedding. And that was like so fun because like you can play with colors. It doesn't just have to be dried fruit on tables. It can be like colorful additives. Like it's like a lot of fun. So I've been enjoying that. So if that's something you're interested in, you're like really stunted, you can also just comment on one of my videos and I'll probably
Ask
do it
Gabby.
for you. I'll probably do the whole thing for you. And then you just give that to your planner. But it's fun to do. It's definitely a great creative outlet for me. And it makes it hard because everybody on these comments has such great ideas on what they want to do and don't know how to execute it. And then I go through and I start looking at it and I'm like, well, dang, maybe I should have done this. Maybe this, like, that's the other thing that'll drive you crazy as a bride. I've like changed my mind so many times. I cannot land on a style and I think that's the hard part is like you have to pick a style because I'm all for whatever creativity you want in it. But I think in the end, like if you want to do colorful, you have to full do colorful. If you want to do black and white, you got to do full black and white. You kind of have to pick what your creative thing is. And I just want all of them. I want the pretty mountain cabin wedding. I want the grand ballroom wedding. Like you can't pick. We're just gonna have to
Well,
have a wedding.
that's why you just every year you go and renew your vows and you get that mountain background or you get that beach background or Iceland or whatever it may be. So you can just recreate all of them. I'm
Oh my
here for
gosh,
that.
Kyle will kill me. He's like, please stop this madness. Please stop this madness. We've already had our Arches vow exchange, which my mom will kill me if I call an elopement and she listens to this. So sorry, mom. It's a vow exchange. Nothing legal done there. We had that. We're going actually to the courthouse in 2 weeks. And of course, I want to make that an affair. Not that I need to, but like, why not? Why not have those courthouse pictures because that's actually the licensing. And then you have the actual wedding. Then I'm like, well, we should do a 1 year anniversary vow renewal. And he's like, what is wrong with you? And this is not with, the fact that for me personally, that we bridal model. So like how many wedding photos? People don't really, when I post my actual wedding photos, I don't think anybody will realize they're my wedding photos. So
100%. You have become professional couple for weddings. You guys are like professional wedding models.
well, when people say that all the time, I have so many people constantly being like, do you love your dress? Like, how did you decide that was going to be your dress? And like people commenting on the fact that like I've worn a billion wedding dresses, and I kind of have to be like, yeah, like we're bridal models. Like I've worn everything, I've done every style, so it made it harder. Everybody thought that would make it easier on me. It made it way harder because I don't know what my style is supposed to be because I've just been put in so many things for so long without like arguing that I don't know. It was a very weird process. I think that's why I ended up with so many dresses, and I'm still to this day very confused about which dress is my favorite. But we're
That's
doing
why
it.
you have multiple dresses, right?
Exactly. Well, let's talk about, we'll peel away from that. Let's talk about Behind the Vows. Behind the Vows, obviously, we've created on the Marry Me Tampa Bay team to be a behind the scenes content creator. For those who don't know what that is, kind of give a little synopsis of what a behind the scenes content creator is and like what you think the value is in the industry. And then I would love to tap in on the fact that I do think there is something that sets us apart. And I kind of talked about it with Sean, but I'll kind of like layer that in after you kind of give us your spiel.
Yeah. So Behind the Vows is interesting. And Gabby, you actually brought this to my attention about wedding content creation. The purpose of Behind the Vows is to document your wedding day. But of course, the next question would be, okay, well, how is that different from a photographer or from a videographer? We all know that raw phone footage is really important on social media these days. And it's something that, thanks to TikTok, your content doesn't have to be this polished thing that it used to have to be on Instagram. Raw kind of B-roll in the moment types of videos really resonate with people. So that's what we do. We literally follow you around with an iPhone all day and help create some of those memories for you. And the cool thing of what we do is you get your content back within 24 to 48 hours. So it will take your videographer several weeks to go through all of that footage and to edit down that cinematic masterpiece, because that's what they're creating, a cinematic masterpiece. We are simply taking that content, kind of culling it down for you, giving you 600 iPhone clips that you can make your own reels with, or that you can rewatch that first kiss or whatnot. But the nice thing about it is it's instantaneous to where you're getting it in 24 to 48 hours. It's kind of like that dopamine hit right after your wedding, so you can see everything. But it is also going to be very different from what a photographer and videographer gives you as well. So it's just being able to relive your wedding day right away and see everything as it unfolds, and not have to rely on your friends or family who are trying to actually enjoy your wedding or to stay in the moment. It's having someone else do that so you can watch that back immediately.
And I feel like there's honestly two types of people. At first, when we started this, I really thought that this was going to appeal to the girl or guy that's on social media. I really thought that it was going to appeal to the person that wanted to post TikToks and reels and things like that. And I feel like we've kind of seen the opposite. I feel like we've had a couple brides come through and they're not even on social media. And it's very much, they just want the memories. So, like, I think it's two types of people. It's the people that are like me, who's a content creator myself, and want help so that I don't have to do my job that I do every day on that day. And then the other type of person is the person that's like, I don't even know how to do this. So I need somebody to do it. So it's kind of, there's two sides to that. I think what's really cool that makes us stand out, because obviously content creators are popping up everywhere for wedding days. It's becoming very popular. Anybody that's an influencer feels like now they have that skill set level. I think what sets us apart is our intricate knowledge of the wedding industry that these other vendors do not have. But also, I feel like we found a really fun and cool niche because we are so close with all of these vendors as well. I don't believe that the content creation for us is going to remain just as a wedding day offering. And so, for those vendors listening, I feel like it's really time to invest. Sean talked about it last week. And if you guys didn't listen to the episode last week, you really should. He is very opinionated about this. And I waver back and forth, but he strongly believes if you are a wedding vendor, you need to be online, you need to be on social media, you need to have a presence. That's hard. I will not devalue. Sean said something about like, just you pop in front of the camera. It's easy. He's got a great personality. It's easy for him. I can understand where it's not easy for all. So this is a really great opportunity as well to hire a behind the scenes content creator to follow you around on wedding day, to get those behind the scenes. I believe we just helped a florist recently, but it's one of those things where that's not a niche that I feel like other girlies and content creators can just come in and take over. We have the relationship with vendors and we know what they're looking for because we do this already daily as a publication. So I think that that's a really unique niche that Behind the Vows is going to start to also take on, that I think is going to be really unique and cool, that it's not just about the bride, but it's also about the vendors and being able to help, because we already do so much help with social media management for our vendors and things like that. This is a great level and another way to get the content for them that's great, that's not as stock imagey, though that way you can have that variety. It's not just picture after picture from a professional photographer, because people really do like that more user generated kind of feel to things. I think that that's kind of where I see us heading, honestly, to stand out, because it is becoming a little bit saturated, and it always does at first. I'm sure it'll wave out and die down a little bit, but right now it's a trend, so everybody's doing it. But I think longevity wise, once we see the people that can't stay the distance, and when we see that brides maybe are asking for it less, I don't think it should ever go away for vendors, because there's always going to be a social media platform that they need to create on. So I do like that we're doing that aspect as well. But I enjoy working with the brides just as much. It's been really fun to kind of like watch this flourish and grow. We did make a separate account for it. So if you're already a Marry Me Tampa Bay follower, go ahead and check out Behind the Vows, because that's where we're going to post all of that kind of stuff. I think it's a lot more fun for Steph and I, who are, the behind the scenes girls. It's going to be a lot more fun for us to be able to show personality, I think, in videos, because we have those brides in action versus having to collect that from vendors for Marry Me Tampa Bay. So I think it'll be
Yeah,
fun. I'm excited
for
about it.
sure. And I think something else that couples need to realize whenever they're hiring a wedding content creator, and for those of you who are doing content creation or thinking about it, something that I always tell couples, a few things. One, how are we different from wedding videography? As I mentioned, your wedding videographer is creating that cinematic masterpiece. Like they have the $10,000 camera. We don't. We have our iPhone. But we deliver it right away. They take several weeks because, again, of what they're editing and creating. But something that people may not realize is the dynamics of the wedding day. So I always tell couples that we are your photographer and videographers kind of plus one, right? They are the main star of the show in terms of capturing content. We are never going to get in their way, and we're never going to make them sacrifice their shot so that we can get it. So we're very, very conscious of kind of our role is you should always see the photographer or videographer the back of their head, because if you see the back of their head then you're not in front of their camera. So that's something that I think has put a lot of the vendors at ease that we work with, is they know that they're not going to have to shoo us out of the way. We're very, very conscious of that. And also, as I mentioned earlier, when it comes to working with vendors, vendors want to work with other vendors who they know that they can trust and who they know can, make their job easier so that they can do the best that they can for the couple. And that's something because, quite luckily, a lot of the weddings we've worked at, we know the planner, they're one of our preferred planners, the photographers, they're one of our preferred photographers or videographers. So that really helps as well, allowing us to be cohesive and allowing us to make sure that we can stay within the timeline constraints and that we're not going to have the other vendors have to sacrifice what they're doing to add in a third person who's creating content. So that's something that definitely sets us apart, that no one else can even come close to touching us in terms of understanding the dynamics of a wedding day and already having really strong relationships with those vendors.
No, and I definitely feel like I walk into every event that we do, and my little jokey joke is I tell them I'm their shadow. Like, I am not supposed to be in the way, I am behind them. I am basically non existent to them. I am just that shadow that follows along. And you can still get great shots from that. You don't need to be in the couple's face to get the perfect behind the scenes shot. And a lot of the times it's kind of fun to have like that behind the scenes shot of, and this comes from the content creator perspective of me. If you're a couple hiring somebody because you're content creators and want to showcase that kind of side, I think it's really cool to almost have that photographer video where there you can see the photographer, you can see them, and then to be able to like make that a reel with the photos. I think that that's really unique and cool, like having that kind of, people like that raw behind the scenes moment when it comes to posting on social. So I think that that's a great way to also get that kind of engaging content that couples might be looking for posting purposes.
100%. And then touching on what you said for vendors and the vendor side, absolutely getting that UGC, that user generated content, that allows you to showcase some of your work or to show all the effort that goes into making, that thing that you're making for them, whether it be, we just did it for a florist this past weekend. They spent a lot of time putting together the floral arch, and now they have a lot of content showing all that went into that, or showing them working at a specific venue, or showing them, laughing and having fun. So there's a lot of moments that you can get because couples don't just want to see the polished final project. They like, and they're interested in seeing what all led up to that. So
I think it's
yes.
a great way too, for because a lot of things in the wedding industry get dubbed as overpriced. When you're able to showcase the work that goes into something, your value immediately goes up. So, like if you're saying it took forever for them to put that arch together, that bride that comes along and is like, "Oh, I can't believe you charged that for an arch." Well, on your social media, if you're able to share that kind of content, they'll know exactly why you charge that much for that arch. The time that goes into that, the meticulousness. Once a couple can see that they can't do it themselves, I know there are DIY couples out there. That ain't me. Can't do it. Not crafty. I've got a very creative mind. I cannot actually physically. My fiance is the more tangible builder kind of person, not DIY. And although people can do that, I think the purpose of paying as much as you do for a wedding vendor to do something for you, it's really because it's something, A, that's time consuming that you cannot possibly have the time to do. And B, they have an attention to detail that's just going to be superior. So being able to see that behind the scenes come together is always going to kind of remind people why they're at where they're at and why they're pricing what they're pricing too. I think that's a huge
Yeah.
aspect.
And something else, especially when it comes to vendors, when you're hiring vendors that are, quote, let's say hour based, right? You hire your photographer for 8 hours, or you hire your videographer for 10 hours, or you hire your planner for 12 hours. When I remember when I got married, I'm thinking, I'm doing the math in my head. They're charging this much and they're only working 8 hours. Like they're making $1 billion. It is not the case at all. You know this, Gabby, when it comes to photography. The actual shooting of the day, that is a small part of your job. There is culling, there's editing, there's uploading. That
It's
takes
the easiest
longer
part.
than the actual wedding day. So that's something that, even with the content creation side, we have packages that are X number of hours, but we're also probably spending, just as many hours calling down the videos, making the reels, uploading everything. So if you ever think about your photographers charging X amount of dollars and they're for X amount of hours, multiply that times 3 or 4, and that's really how many hours they're working, not to mention all the costs that go into running a business. Same thing for videography. I think that videographers spend a minimum of 40 hours, as in a full work week of just editing your video.
And it does vary per like industry member. I know, and I think I've talked about this on a past episode, but my videographer has a very unique style. He doesn't film 5-minute cinematic pieces. He films 20-minute documentaries. So my wait time on my wedding video, when I told some of my friends who have been married, they're like, "Oh my gosh, that's so long." And I was like, "Yeah, but I'm not getting a 5 to 10-minute video back of some scenic shots. I'm getting full audio, full talking, documentary style video. I'm gonna have to wait longer." And having that realistic expectation was really like, he made sure to let me know that that's why those wait times are longer. That's why his pricing is higher. The equipment he uses is a lot more intricate. I've shared this a lot. I don't know if I've shared this with you, Anna, but like, he has 16 mics. 16 of my closest friends and family will be mic'd up all day long. That is audio he has to go through for 16 people for over 8 hours.
That's amazing. That's going to be such a cool video for you to be able to watch back and to have. And that's the cool thing too with videography, especially, is some of my favorite moments are the most unassuming ones, right? Like, for example, one of our team members, Amanda, whenever I watched her wedding video, one of my favorite parts, she had an amazing dress, she had an amazing wedding. The decor was beautiful. One of my favorite parts of her wedding video was when her husband saw her for the first time, like the gasp he made, because you can feel that like in your bones, it's just little subtle things like that. So I am always pro wedding videography because you hear that sound that you may not always pick up on. And that's something, as a wedding content creator, we don't get to do that because we don't have you mic'd up. So that's a huge difference between what we do in videography. So the fact that you'll get to have all those reactions of all of those people, it's going to be touching. It's going to be funny, possibly cringeworthy in some moments, but in a great way,
No, and it's definitely like strategic. You're going to want to put mics on people that have something good to say or something funny, something heartfelt. But I mean, I just did that quick math. I mean, 16 people mic'd up for 8 hours. That's 128 hours of just listening to the audio. And I remember I cracked a joke with Justin right out the gate, and I was like, "So like, you've heard some wild things said, huh? Because people start drinking and I'm sure they forget their mic." And he's like, "Yep. And I don't return the audios to the couple because I'm not putting those relationships in jeopardy."
Which is very smart on his end. He's a very smart guy for doing that.
He's like, and that's another really cool additive piece that I love. He is going to give the audio back for Kyle and I, though. So like, I'll have everything I've said all day, which could be cringeworthy, but like that aspect.
But in a great way.
Yeah. But it's like, we get that audio. Like, who says they get to like word for word relive their wedding? How many times you've been like, "Oh, I think I said something like this. Now I actually will know." It's very cool. So like, those vendors put in so much time behind the scenes. Wedding day is such a small piece of it. The same goes for planners. Their work is really before the wedding. The wedding day is not it, unless you're hiring a day of coordinator. But that's kind of, where that lies. But
even with day of coordinators, though, I mean, they put a lot of work ahead of time into the timeline, coordinating with all the vendors, because The wedding day is so tight in terms of time that they literally have like 10 minutes carved out for this or that. And if you lose some of that, it can really put your wedding day in a spiral. So even day of coordinators, you're hiring them for an 8-hour package. They usually start working with you 30 days before, 45, 60 days, and they are visualizing what could go wrong. So they're planning
Yeah.
ahead to make sure that, oh, you know what, that thing you wanted to do at that time, that's not going to work. Or that thing you wanted to do at the venue, that's not going to work because there's no power outlet there or whatever it may be. So they are seeing so many worst case scenarios in their head and planning not just for what should be happening and going right, but for all the things that could go wrong and trying to stop that before that happens.
Exactly. No, there's so much work from every vendor. I don't think there's a single vendor that doesn't have like prep work for the wedding. Like there's nobody that just shows up day of. The florist has to plan what she's doing and get her flowers. The videographer, the photographer, the planner, the caterers, like everybody's got something pre. So just remember that when you're thinking about these prices and going, how can they charge this much for a day? It's not a day. So, and weddings are kind of one of those rare things that are just, there's so much more to them. But I do want to pivot and kind of ask one like little final question to kind of like round this out that I also have been asking everybody that's been like, on, just because I'm curious and we don't really know. But where do you see the wedding industry in the next couple of years evolving? I know we're now hearing about proposal gaps and like all these crazy different terms and like seeing a slowdown, but then a rise. Where do you see it going in the next couple of years?
It's really so hard to say in terms of that particular thing. I would say my answer to that would be what I have continued to see over the years are that weddings are not becoming the standardized thing that should be a certain way. It's becoming what people want it to be. And I think that COVID really fueled that with people saying, I don't want to have a big wedding. I want to have a small wedding, or I want to do an elopement, or I want to do this and that. And that kind of gave them permission to do so. Now, obviously, people are having their big weddings again, which is totally fine. But I think that people are saying that I want to do what I want to do with my wedding. And I think that that's so important to really make it your own. That's what's going to make it stand out. So we are seeing more and more of that, of couples incorporating more personal touches into their weddings. So I only hope to see more of that. In addition, though, of where do I see it going? I mean, just in the past few years, as you mentioned earlier, the whole bachelorette party category has popped up to where now you can hire a planner to plan your bachelorette party. Now you have wedding content creators that have popped up. So there are more and more aspects of the wedding day or the whole wedding planning process. They're kind of making it, more of a thing, which is great if that's what you want it to be. Of course, you don't have to make it that way. But I love seeing all the new ways that you can make your wedding day or the wedding planning a special moment to you, and having those resources are really great. But definitely don't shy on photography. Definitely don't shy on wedding videography. I feel like people sometimes with the wedding videographer will say, hey, if we have enough money left, we'll add that in if we can. Or they've spent all their money and now they're trying to find a wedding videographer and they only have $1,500. You're probably not going to be happy with that $1,500 wedding videography when you've been looking at videographers that cost 5,000, 7,000, whatever. You're not going to be happy with the quality they give you because that's not the price point. So just
Definitely.
making sure that you do capture all those memories, because when it's all said and done, and Gabby, you'll learn this, and you may have already from the things you've done, it does go by so fast. There are so many things that happen. It's like going to a Taylor Swift concert. You've gone there. It was the most amazing thing ever. And then you leave and you're like, I was there. I loved it, but I forgot all the little things that have happened. So when you rewatch your Eras Tour movie, your wedding video, you're like, oh, wow, I didn't notice that. Or look at the way they laughed, or look at the way they winked or did this. It's such a surreal experience. You will not be able to fully take it in on the day of.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Okay, and one final question, just because it's relevant to you. You will obviously be in attendance of my wedding. What is one thing you're excited to see that I do with the wedding?
Oh gosh, I'm excited to see everything just because I know all the thoughts that you've put into your day. You would think with me being a wedding editor, I'm like, oh, I can't wait to see the decor, the dress. I honestly can't wait just to see you and Kyle together because you guys, you mesh so well. And he's such, we've waited for Kyle for a long time for you. Like, Kyle is your Travis, Kelsey, let's be honest. So I'm just really excited to see the two of you happy and celebrating because we've been waiting a long time for a great man to come into your life, and you have one. And I know you've put your heart and soul into planning the wedding, so I'm excited to watch you just to be able to take it in and to enjoy it. That's what I am honestly most excited to see about your wedding.
And I hope I'm like able to. That planner fear in me, as somebody that plans so many things all the time, I'm terrified that I'm not gonna be able to live in the moment because I'm gonna be in host mode. So like that's my like biggest fear, but also like my biggest goal to not do, because I do that with every other event aspect of
Mhm.
my life. So definitely gonna have to work through that one, but we'll get there.
Yeah. And the something will probably go wrong because when you have that many moving parts, something's, possibly going to go wrong, or the wrong shade of something is going to show up. In the scheme of things, it doesn't matter. It could rain horribly on your wedding day. God forbid, let's hope it doesn't happen, but it
It's
could.
January,
And
no rain. We don't get
it
rain.
could
No.
still be an amazing day. So don't worry about all of that. Like, that's the best advice I can give you is the day of, turn all that off. It's you've planned it up to that point. You've done everything you can do. You have to leave it in the hands of your vendors. Your only job is to enjoy that day with Kyle and your friends and your family, and nothing else.
And I definitely am going to focus on that. And there's definitely already been hiccups where I'm like, things are definitely not going to go the way I want. Like, I small little things that shouldn't matter that like I've let get to me. And I definitely need to like peel back. Like, for example, our venue, they completely remodeled their back reception lawn area. And it's beautiful. It's just not what I booked and not what I envisioned. And like having to alter your mind to like be okay with that can be tricky. So I think once I see it all together and like it's actually done, it'll be fine. It's just like those vision changes. If you're planning a wedding and you start a year out, it's not going to look the same as how it looked in your head when you signed
Yeah.
your agreements. So having that shift is a difficult one, but that would be a tip that I have for brides as well, is like you've got to let go of certain visions because they're not going to exist a year later.
Mm-hmm.
They don't.
And in the wedding industry, we kind of always default to saying like, oh, your perfect day, you're perfect, perfect, perfect. It's not going to be perfect. It is a day that has, hundreds of people there sometimes. You've got 10 different businesses working. You've got all these different things. It's not going to be perfect. It's just about making it memorable and making it enjoyable. And I'm sure that your day will be all of that times 100.
Exactly. Well, thank you so much, Anna. I appreciate you coming on. It was a treat. And if you guys have not checked out Marry Me Tampa Bay, it's marrymetamaBay.com. Pretty simple. Same for the Instagram. Behind the vows, we have the Instagram as well, which is all linked on there, but I'll make sure to include it in the description below. If you are a vendor wanting to get in contact with Anna about memberships, I will also include her email in there so you guys can reach out. But that's really all I have for you guys. Thank you so much, Anna, and everybody listening. Next month, we start with a completely new theme, so join us then. But thank you guys for all of the wedding love. It's been a treat. I'm sure we will do another wedding talk post-wedding next year in 2024, but it was great to close it out with you for 2023. So thank you.
Thank you. Bye bye.